Okay, so you know how people say they'd rather die than speak in public?
Oh, yeah.
Pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
I mean, public speaking can be scary,
Yeah.
but is it really that bad? Anyway, we're diving deep into this today with help from an episode of the Conquer Your Fears podcast.
I think that stat just goes to show how common this fear is.
For sure.
But you know what's interesting? The podcast actually digs into the root of this fear. Like, where does it come from?
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
And it turns out it's often all about this fear of being judged. You know, we're terrified of messing up or being laughed at or maybe just not connecting with the audience at all.
I can definitely relate to that. Like, everyone's staring at you just waiting for you to make a mistake.
Exactly. It's like this spotlight effect. But here's the thing. The podcast makes this really interesting point that most audiences actually want the speaker to do well.
Really? Like, they're rooting for you.
Yeah. Think about it. When you're in the audience, do you want the speaker to crash and burn?
I guess not.
Yeah.
I mean, I usually want to get something out of it.
Right. So most people are focused on the message, not on picking apart your every move.
Okay, that makes sense. But it's still hard to shake that feeling of everyone judging you.
Oh, absolutely. It's one thing to understand it logically, but it's another to actually feel it when you're up there.
Totally. Speaking of feeling it, the podcast shared this story about Warren Buffett that really got me thinking.
Wait, Warren Buffett, the investor. I wouldn't picture him being afraid of public speaking.
Right. You'd think he'd be a natural panic. But apparently, early in his career, he was absolutely terrified. He even dropped a college course just to avoid giving presentations.
Wow, that's serious commitment to avoiding public speaking.
Right. And it shows that this fear can affect anyone, even someone who ends up being super successful.
So true. But what's inspiring is how he overcame it. The podcast talks about how he took a Dale Carnegie course and started practicing in small groups and eventually built up his confidence.
So he basically had to learn how to do it just like anything else.
Exactly. And he actually said later on that learning to speak in public was the best investment he ever made.
That's a pretty strong endorsement coming from him.
It really emphasizes that public speaking is a skill you can develop. It's not just something you're born with or without.
Makes sense. So are there other examples of people overcoming this fear?
Definitely. The podcast also shared this story about a woman named Priya who initially let her fear hold her back professionally. Yeah, so Priya was actually avoiding promotions at work.
Whoa, serious?
Yeah, because they would require her to give presentations.
That's crazy. I mean, it just shows how much this fear can impact your life.
Totally. But her turning point was joining Toastmasters.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
It's a great organization for people who want to practice public speaking in a safe, supportive environment.
So it's like a no-judgment zone where you can kind of just work through those nerves.
Exactly. And the podcast talked about how Priya was a nervous wreck at first.
I can imagine.
But the encouragement from the group helped her keep going, and over time she started to feel more comfortable, and her confidence grew.
That's awesome. It's like having a team of cheerleaders for your public speaking journey.
For sure. And speaking of support, the podcast also talked about some practical techniques anyone can use.
Like what?
Well, they emphasize the idea of starting small.
So like practicing in front of a mirror or something.
Yeah, or maybe chatting with family at dinner, or volunteering to lead a small team meeting.
Okay, so basically easing into it and gradually building up your confidence.
Exactly. Because like they said, it's like training for a marathon. You wouldn't just jump into running 26 miles.
Right, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
But what about when you do have to speak in front of a larger group? How do you deal with those pre-presentation jitters?
That's where things like breathing techniques come in.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that. But I've always been a little skeptical. Like, does just taking a deep breath really help?
Well, they actually went into more detail than that. They recommend specific techniques like diaphragmatic breathing, where you focus on filling your belly with air.
Huh, never heard of that.
It's supposed to help calm your nervous system by slowing your heart rate and easing muscle tension.
Interesting. So there's actual science behind it.
Yeah, it's not just some random thing people say.
Cool. What about other techniques? Any that surprised you?
I thought the whole visualization thing was fascinating, even though I was a bit skeptical at first.
Visualization.
Yeah.
Like picturing yourself giving an amazing speech.
Yeah, it sounds almost too simple, right?
Kind of like magic.
But the idea is that by vividly imagining yourself succeeding, you're basically training your brain to associate public speaking with positive emotions instead of fear.
So you're kind of rewiring your brain.
In a way,
I
yeah.
like that. But you know, sometimes I think I get so caught up in worrying about how I'm speaking that I forget to actually connect with the people I'm talking to.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. It's like you're so focused on yourself that you forget about the audience.
Exactly. And then it's like I'm just talking at them instead of with them.
Right. And the podcast actually had a good suggestion for that. They said to shift your focus from yourself to the audience.
Oh, that's interesting.
Instead of obsessing over every word and gesture, think about the value you want to provide to the people listening.
So it's like getting out of your own head and focusing on sharing your message in a way that resonates with the audience.
Exactly. Think about it when you're genuinely passionate about something and you're sharing it with people who are interested, the fear tends to melt away.
That's so true. Okay, so back to Priya. She went through this whole journey of self-discovery and practicing with Toastmasters, and eventually she ended up giving a keynote speech to over 500 people. That's insane!
It's pretty incredible, right? From avoiding presentations to keynoting a huge event. Talk about a
Oh,
transformation.
seriously. It just goes to show what's possible when you face your fears head on.
And you know, it's even more inspiring. The podcast mentioned that Priya wasn't completely fearless during that keynote.
Oh, so she still got nervous.
Yeah, she still had nerves, but she had learned how to manage them. It wasn't about being some kind of superhuman public speaking robot.
That makes me feel a lot better, actually. Because I don't think I could ever be completely fearless when speaking in public.
Me neither. But the point is that you don't have to be. You just need to develop the skills and the mindset to work through those nerves and still deliver your message effectively.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And that's something that really stuck with me from the whole Conquer Your Fears episode. Public speaking is a journey, not a destination.
I love that. And there are so many different strategies you can use along the way, like starting small, practicing breathing techniques, visualizing success, shifting your focus to the audience. It's about finding what works for you and building those public speaking muscles over time.
And let's not forget the power of community. Priya's story with Toastmasters really highlights how much a supportive environment can help you grow.
Yeah, it's like having a whole team of people rooting for you.
Exactly. So for anyone listening who's still feeling that knot of anxiety about public speaking, just remember that you're not alone. There are tons of people who have been in your shoes and they've overcome it.
That's a good point. It can be easy to feel like you're the only one struggling with this.
But you're not. And the fact that you're listening to this deep dive means you're already taking steps to address your fear.
So true. So what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who's just starting out on their public speaking journey?
I would say think back to all the inspiring stories we've talked about today, like Warren Buffett and Priya and all the other people who have faced their fear and found their voice. If they can do it, you can too.
I love that. So it's not about comparing yourself to some perfect public speaker. It's about focusing on your own progress and celebrating each step you take.
Exactly. And remember, every journey starts with a single step. So pick one strategy that resonates with you and give it a try.
Maybe it's practicing in front of the mirror or volunteering to speak up at your next meeting. Whatever feels doable for you.
Exactly. And just keep practicing and keep learning and keep believing in yourself.
That's great advice. And you know what? Your voice matters. The world needs to hear what you have to say. So don't let fear hold you back. Embrace the challenge and share your unique voice with the world.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that's a wrap for our deep dive into conquering the fear of public speaking. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.